All right, so let's dive into this topic that always seems to get people talking. Alien visits.
Mm.
Now, I know some of our listeners out there, you're skeptics. And that's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's how we should approach these kinds of crazy ideas, right?
Yeah.
Got to be skeptical.
Yeah.
But, even if you don't buy into the whole little green men thing, I think there's something kind of fun about, just exploring the history and the arguments around this idea that we've had, visitors from outer space.
Yeah, for sure.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be taking a critical look at the extraterrestrial hypothesis, or ETH. This is the idea that some UFO sightings are actually alien spacecraft.
Yeah.
We'll be checking out some really cool sources, from Wikipedia to some historical analyses of famous UFO cases, to try to figure out why, despite how popular this idea is in some circles, the scientific community isn't really convinced.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's really interesting is how long humans have been thinking about, beings from other worlds. Even before we could launch rockets into space, people were already imagining meeting extraterrestrials.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Remember that Wikipedia article? It mentions an 1864 French newspaper article about geologists who supposedly found a mummified alien.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the uproar that would cause back then? No social media to, fact check or debunk.
Oh, yeah. Totally different time.
Totally.
And then there's H.G. Wells, right? Or the Worlds came out in 1898. That book really captured the public imagination and gave us one of the first, big depictions of an alien invasion. It's wild how those early stories still kind of shape how we think about extraterrestrials today.
I know, it's true. And speaking of early perceptions, what about the whole mystery airships craze in the late 1800s and early 1900s? People were seeing all these weird things up in the sky, and of course some people just jumped to the conclusion that it had to be Martians.
Right.
I guess some things never change, huh? Nope. Some things never change. That's a great point, though. It seems like whenever there's something we can't immediately explain, aliens are always kind of the go-to answer. But it wasn't really until 1947 that things really took off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when we really entered the age of the modern UFO post-World War. 2 Cold War anxieties were high, and suddenly everybody and their mother was seeing flying saucers.
Okay, so cue the dramatic music. This is where Kenneth Arnold comes in, right? His sighting near Mount Rainier, the one that gave us the term flying saucer.
Exactly. Arnold said these objects were moving like saucers skipping on water, and that image just stuck. But even then, most people weren't totally sold on the whole alien spaceship thing.
Really?
Yeah. Gallup polls from back then actually showed that more people thought the sightings were things like secret weapons or even mass hysteria.
Huh. Interesting. So even during the height of the flying saucer craze, most people weren't quite ready to say it was aliens. So when did the government actually step in and start, taking UFOs seriously? Well, in 1947, the U.S. military started Project Sign, their first official UFO study. Now, you might think that means they were all in on the alien idea, but it was actually more complicated than that.
Oh, I bet there's a Cold War angle to this.
Absolutely. The Wikipedia article on Project Sign says that their interest was mostly driven by, Cold War paranoia. They were worried that these UFO sightings might be Soviet technology, or even worse, some kind of psychological warfare tactic to freak out the American public. The CIA especially was more concerned with how a foreign power might exploit UFOs, than with the possibility of little green men.
The classic Cold War spy games. So Project Sign didn't find any evidence of alien spaceships hiding out in Area 51 or anything. But what if the big one, the granddaddy of all UFO mysteries, Roswell?
Oh, yes. The holy grail for anyone who believes in UFOs. Let's break down what actually happened there based on that great history article you sent. It all started in 1947 when a rancher in New Mexico found some weird debris on his property. The local Air Force base put out a press release saying they had recovered a flying disc.
Wait, they actually said flying disc? Talk about a PR nightmare.
I know, right? But wait, there is a twist. The higher-ups in the military quickly changed their story and insisted that the debris was from a weather balloon. They even went so far as to stage photos of military personnel with pieces of this supposed weather balloon. But of course, the damage was done. The flying disc announcement had already captured everyone's imagination, and just like that, the Roswell incident became this symbol of government cover-ups and alien conspiracies.
It's crazy how that story is still so powerful, even after all these years. So what's the real story? Did those Air Force guys just get a little carried away?
Well, it wasn't until the 1990s that the Air Force finally admitted that the weather balloon story was a lie. They then claimed that the Roswell debris actually came from a top-secret project called Project Mogul.
Project Mogul. Sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Maybe not as exciting as a spy movie, but pretty clever for the Cold War project. Mogul was designed to use high-altitude balloons equipped with microphones to spy on the Soviet Union. They were trying to pick up sound waves from Soviet nuclear tests, which was super top-secret information back then. So when that Roswell wreckage was found, they couldn't exactly reveal what it really was.
Yeah, that makes sense in a the truth is out there kind of way. But what about the rumors of alien bodies found at Roswell? They didn't have an explanation for that too, did they?
Oh, they did. In a report from 1997, the Air Force claimed that those supposed alien bodies were actually test dummies used in parachute experiments. Apparently, these dummies were often mistaken for extraterrestrial visitors.
Test dummies? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some creepy test dummies, but come on, aliens. That seems like a bit of a stretch.
Well, that's the official explanation, and it's definitely less exciting than aliens from outer space. But even with the Air Force's admissions, Roswell is still a popular topic for conspiracy theorists. Some people just really want to believe.
It definitely makes for a good story. But speaking of believing, let's shift gears for a second. We've talked about the history and some famous UFO incidents, but why haven't scientists, as a group, really embraced the idea of alien visits? They've seen the same blurry photos and heard the same eyewitness accounts.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But here's the thing. The scientific community is all about evidence, and when it comes to aliens visiting Earth, well, that evidence is pretty much non-existent.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in a cool UFO story. But then you take a step back and look at it from a scientific point of view, and things start to unravel a bit.
Exactly.
So what would it actually take to convince scientists that aliens have come to Earth? Like, what kind of undeniable proof would they need?
Well, it would have to be something that couldn't be explained by anything we already know about, natural phenomena or human technology. It would need to be, totally irrefutable proof, something that would make even the biggest skeptic say, okay, I believe.
So, what would that even look like? Are we talking a spaceship landing on the White House lawn? Or maybe an alien ambassador just casually strolling into the United Nations for a chat?
Well, those scenarios would be pretty hard to ignore, right? But even something a little less dramatic could be pretty convincing if it was truly unexplainable. Imagine if we picked up a radio signal from space and it was clearly artificial, like some complex sequence of pulses or tones that there's just no way nature could have created.
Oh, like a cosmic Morse code message saying, "Take me to your leader."
Uh-huh. Maybe not that simple. But you get the idea. Or imagine finding an artifact on another planet, some piece of technology that's so advanced, so obviously not made by humans, that it could only be the work of an alien civilization.
Like a little metal monolith with an instruction manual written in some alien language. That would definitely raise some eyebrows.
Definitely. But let's be real. Even if we did find something like that, there would still be people who would try to explain it away as some kind of elaborate hoax or some weird natural phenomenon, right?
Absolutely.
That's just how skepticism works. And it's an important part of science. Scientists are trained to question everything, to look for other explanations, and to demand solid evidence before accepting anything, especially a claim as extraordinary as alien visitation. It's not about being closed-minded. It's about being careful and making sure the evidence really backs up the conclusion.
Okay, so scientists are a tough crowd to please. But what about the other side of this? Are there any actual attempts to reach out to alien civilizations? Are we trying to make contact, or are we just sitting here passively hoping someone picks up our radio waves?
Well, there have been a few attempts to send messages out into space. That Wikipedia article mentioned the Arecibo message.
Yeah.
It was beamed toward a star cluster back in 1974. Basically a cosmic, hello, is anyone out there kind of message with basic info about humans and Earth. But considering how incredibly vast space is.
It's like sending a postcard to a random address in another galaxy and crossing your fingers that someone writes back. You might get lucky, but it's not exactly the most reliable way to make a new pen pal.
Exactly. But there are more ongoing efforts to search for signs of alien intelligence. The SETI Institute, for example. They've been scanning the skies for decades, listening for any artificial signals that might indicate another technological civilization out there.
Right, SETI. The folks with the giant radio telescopes.
Yeah.
Always listening for a whisper from the cosmos. It seems like a long shot, though, doesn't it? Like trying to find a needle in a cosmic haystack.
It's a massive undertaking, for sure. The universe is mind-bogglingly huge, and the chances of picking up a signal from another civilization are incredibly slim. But the SETI people are dedicated. And who knows, maybe one day they'll hit the jackpot.
That would change everything, wouldn't it?
It really would.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about how UFOs and the belief in alien visits have impacted our culture. Why do you think this idea continues to grab people's imagination so strongly, even when science is skeptical?
That's a great question. And I think it has to do with a very basic human need. the need to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. The Vice CE article we read talked about how UFO sightings often tap into our deepest fears and desires.
Right. Like on the one hand, there's this primal fear of the unknown, the possibility of being invaded by a more advanced species, like something straight out of War of the Worlds. But on the other hand,
There's this sense of wonder and excitement, a hope that we're not alone in the universe, that there's something more out there, some greater purpose to our existence.
So it's this push and pull between fear and wonder, between our worries and our hopes, that keeps us fascinated by the possibility of aliens.
Exactly. It's a powerful mix of emotions, and it's been fueling our fascination with UFOs for decades.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the history of UFO sightings, the evidence or lack thereof, the scientific perspective, and the cultural impact. But before we jump into part 3 of our deep dive, I want to ask you, our listeners, a question. Do you think that just because we don't have concrete scientific evidence, it automatically means aliens haven't visited Earth? Think about that for a minute, and we'll pick up this thread and explore some even more mind-blowing ideas in the next part of the show. Welcome back to the show. Everyone's had some time to think about that question we left you with, right?
Right.
Does the fact that we haven't found solid scientific evidence automatically mean that aliens haven't been here?
It's a tough one. You know, it always seems to lead to even more questions.
It does.
And it really depends on how we define proof. I mean, science is all about looking for evidence-testing ideas and trying to understand the universe better. But even with all our fancy technology, we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to exploring space.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to map the entire ocean floor, but we're only dipping our toes in the water at the edge.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's just so much we don't know. So much we haven't discovered yet.
So much.
And that's why I think it's way too early to just rule out the possibility of alien visits just because we haven't found hard proof yet. It's like saying, well, I've never seen a platypus, so platypuses can't exist.
Right. Just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not out there.
Exactly.
So you're saying we should stay open-minded, even if that means considering ideas that might seem a little out there.
I think it's important to be curious, you know?
Yeah.
And to be willing to look at things from different angles. If we just shut down any idea that doesn't fit with what we think we know about the universe, we might miss out on some truly amazing discoveries.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of that quote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic."
Oh, that's a good one. Who said that?
Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah.
Maybe what we think of as alien is really just technology that's so advanced we can't even wrap our heads around it.
Right. Maybe we wouldn't even recognize it as technology.
Okay, so let's just imagine for a second that a super advanced alien civilization does want to visit Earth. How do you think they would do it? What kind of tech would they need to overcome the challenges of, like, distance time detection?
That's a question that's been keeping scientists and sci-fi writers up at night for ages.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are so many possibilities, it's hard to even imagine.
Well, let's try. Would they use wormholes to make shortcuts through space-time? You know, like bending the fabric of the universe to their will. Or maybe they've figured out some kind of crazy energy source that lets them travel faster than the speed of light, breaking all the laws of physics as we know them.
Those are some classic sci-fi ideas.
They are?
And they make for great movies. But who knows? Maybe the truth is even weirder and more amazing than anything we can think of. Maybe they've mastered interdimensional travel or figured out how to manipulate consciousness so they can bypass the limits of space and time altogether.
Whoa. Now we're getting into some serious mind-bending territory.
Right!
It's exciting and kind of scary to think about all at the same time.
It is. The universe is full of mysteries, and it's humbling to realize how much we still have to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for now, we'll just keep gazing at the stars, keep our ears open for any whispers from space, and keep our minds open to all the amazing possibilities that are out there. Who knows what incredible things we might discover in the vastness of the universe.
Yeah, who knows? And maybe someday we'll finally know for sure whether or not we've had visitors from other worlds. But until then, the search goes on.
Well said. That's a great place to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of UFOs and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep listening to The Deep Dive,